What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and we're back with more Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft coverage as we talk about another section of the Horror Toolkit in Chapter 4, the Haunted Traps. Not too much more than what we the title pretty much says it all. They're new traps, there's a haunted aspect to them, and really that's it. So let's go ahead and take a look. If you like what I do here, consider giving the video a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. I also have a Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft giveaway going on right now. There's a link in the description if you'd like to win a couple of different copies, collector's edition and regular. So here you can see haunted traps, and they pretty much function like any other trap, but they have a haunt score. Again, another new mechanic as part of this that you can choose to adopt or not. So it says a haunted trap's emanation occurs before the trap takes place. The character notices the emanation with a perception check that equals to or exceeds 10 plus the trap's haunt bonus, because you'll see each one has a varying haunt bonus. A character who notices it has until the start of their next turn to react, whatever that might be, which might include, again, it says fleeing, avoiding the trap, attempting to disarm it, and so on. And then I like this. This is probably one of my favorite parts. Class features and spells such as Divine Sense and Detect Evil and Good that discern Desecration also detect haunted traps. Now, one of the problems that I've had is there's really no good rules or definitions about what an area of desecration is. That's a thing that's described for Paladin's Divine Sense as well as Detect Evil and Good. And that's really up to the DM, which is fine. You know, it's something they can come up with, but this is actually giving us a canonical use for those abilities in detecting a haunted trap. So how do you disarm a haunted trap? Well, it says typical methods such as Thieves' Tools and Dispel Magic don't affect haunted traps, which is the only two ways we know how to do this, using Thieves' Tools with a disarm trap check that the DM sets the DC, or for magical traps where it specifically says that Dispel Magic will dispel it, you can do that. However, the Channel Divinity class feature and the Remove Curse spell can. So it says the Channel Divinity class feature, so I assume that means any Channel Divinity, because it's the next line says, the channel to use Channel Divinity, a character uses an action to present their holy symbol and speak a prayer. So it doesn't matter what Channel Divinity you have, whether you're a healing cleric, a knowledge cleric, vengeance paladin, you have access to the ability Channel Divinity, and you can basically present your holy symbol, use an action to expend a use of it, and then disarm the trap. Or, as it states here, use Remove Curse. A character must cast a spell and touch an object that is part of the trap. Whichever disarming method is used, the trap itself then makes a saving throw against the character's spell save DC, adding their haunt bonus to the save. So it's basically a d20 roll plus the haunt bonus to try and see if it can succeed. On a failure, the trap is disarmed for 24 hours. If the trap fails the save by 10 or more, it is permanently disarmed. Depending on the trap's origins, certain spells might also affect the traps, as for example, a haunted trap with a fiendish origin might be permanently disarmed by the Dispel Evil and Good spell. Again, purely up to the DM to decide if there's other caveats, other abilities that you can use it. And it says some can be maybe disarmed in non-magical ways. Such methods might be as simple as wearing the clothes of a haunted house's former owner or singing a lullaby that soothes a restless spirit. Haunted traps disarmed in these non-magical ways remain disarmed for 24 hours. That, again, specific up to the DM. And then we have sample haunted traps. So we don't have a ton. We have 4. So we have Dance Macabre, which is a spell, I think a fifth level spell added in, I think it was in Xanathar's. So this has a haunt bonus of +4. So that's pretty high, right? As far as we know. The haunt bonuses don't have a cap. It doesn't list anything here. It's just that determines different abilities of it. I think +4 is the highest we have. No, we have a +6. So +4 seems to be on the higher scale. Okay. This haunted trap affects a 20-foot radius sphere centered on an ancient but pristine instrument. When a character enters the area, the trap's emanations manifested the sound of distant mournful music. A round later, a phantom performer appears and begins playing the instrument for that next minute. While the performer plays, any creature that enters or starts its turn in the area must make a DC 14 Wisdom saving throw or float 20 feet into the air as though they're affected by an Otto's Irresistible Dance spell. They are joined by illusory dancers as they dance the remainder of the performer's song. As an action, a dancing creature can repeat the saving throw to end the effect, whereupon it falls 20 feet, takes 2d6 bludgeoning damage as part of that. If a creature's saving throw to resist the trap or stop dancing is successful, they're immune to the trap for 24 hours. While the Phantom Performer plays, any creature within the area can use an action to try to convince the performer to stop playing, doing so with a charisma check of DC 14. Persuasion check. When it stops, all creatures affected are freed from its effects and float safely to the ground. So if we think about how that works, it was Dance Macabre not associated with the spell, just that you are having a macabre dance. It says if you have a perception score, a passive perception score, so again, canonical uses and official uses for passive perception, that exceeds or equals 10 plus the trap's haunt bonus. So for this instance, that would be 14. You can see the trap before it activates. So that's kind of right here where it says when a creature enters the trap's area, it starts to manifest that mournful music, and then a round later, the instrument starts to play. So if you have a passive perception score of 14 or higher, can identify something's going on, and you basically have 6 seconds to make a reaction, to do something before the effects of the trap happen. And once it starts playing, then you have to do all this going through the saving throw or be floating up into the air and all that stuff. So you have the option to channel divinity and remove them, to use remove curse to dispel them temporarily, or either one of those to dispel them temporarily. The only issue that I can see happening is it's how do your players know that the traps are haunted? Is it because you're playing in a Ravenloft campaign and you say, hey, these traps might be haunted? Or do you rely on the passive perception check, right? Where you say, hey, by the way, you notice something funky's happening. You kind of allude to start describing it. And then do you say, what do you do? And then the player's just like, I don't know. What do I do? I've never heard of this before. Or do you have to lay out the concept of haunted traps ahead of time, possibly ruining some of the mystique and the intrigue by, prepping everyone that, hey, haunted traps are a thing. Again, you could tell them this at the start of the campaign and not use a haunted trap for several sessions so that maybe they forget about the initial conversation. So it's not like, hey, we're going to be using haunted traps, and then one happens that same session. So they're like, oh, this is the thing we talked about. And then next up we have the Faceless Malice, which has this terrifying art of this person losing their face entirely, which only has a haunt bonus of +2, so half of the last one. It affects a 15-foot cube in front of an ornate mirror. When a visible creature enters the area, which is visible, so if you're invisible, it doesn't trigger it. The trap's emanations manifest as the creature's distorted reflection in the mirror. If they're still in the area at the start of their next turn, they must make a wisdom saving throw of DC 12 or be blinded, deafened, and rendered unable to speak for a minute. Additionally, an illusion makes it appear as though their face has been erased, as shown here in this art. The remove curse spell ends the effect, as does destroying the mirror, and then I give you the hit points and stuff for the mirror. And then if you succeed, or if it fails against the saving throw, it won't activate again for 24 hours after a creature fails its saving throw. So in theory, if everybody happens to appear in front of the cube at the same time, it might affect multiple people, but it looks like it's designed to just hit one. And it says the illusion makes the creature, makes it appear that the creature has had its face erased. To me, it sounds like not just to the creature who had the effect on them, but to me, it sounds like it also happens, like it's an illusion that all of the other people in the party would see, which would be more terrifying. Like, if you look like this in the mirror, that's scary, but if everybody's like, what are you freaking out about? You're fine. When everybody sees this, that's scary. And then we have Icon of the Lower Aerial Kingdoms. This is a haunt bonus of +6, so the highest one we have in this book. This trap is tied to a 10-foot radius sphere surrounding an ominous 1-foot-tall statue of a menacing 4-winged bird-like structure, or figure. Once per day when a creature enters the area, the trap's emanation manifests as the sound of distant flapping wings and warm air. If the creature is still in the area at the start of its next turn, it must make a DC 16 wisdom save or be charmed and incapacitated for a minute. These conditions last until the creature is damaged or someone else uses an action to shake them. If the affected creature remains charmed for that full minute, they are under the effects of the Magic Jar spell, which is your body falls into a catatonic state as your soul leaves it and enters the container you used for the spell's material component. While your soul inhabits this container, you are aware of your surroundings as if you are in the container space, can't move or use reactions. The only action you can take is to project your soul up to 100 feet out of the container, either returning to your living body or attempting to possess a humanoid's body. Their soul entering the statue and being replaced by the spirit of a disembodied fiend. So now their body is replaced with this and they're trapped in the jar. The effect ends when a Dispel Evil and Good or similar spell is cast on the affected creature, the body inhabited by the fiend, or when the statue itself is destroyed. It manifests as a result of fiendish influence, so casting Dispel Evil and Good on the statue permanently disarms the trap. And lastly, the +0, so this one is just basically a straight 10 passive perception, which most people would typically have. A Morbid Memory presents little danger, but it proves useful in revealing important and unsettling glimpses into an area's past. Haunted Trap affects a single room or a 30-foot square area. When a creature enters the area, the trap's emanation manifests as faint disembodied whispers. If they're still in the area when it actually manifests fully, an illusory scene plays out, repeating some terrible event that happened in the area. It typically lasts a minute. When the vision ends, all creatures in the area that saw the illusion must make a DC 10 Wisdom saving throw or be frightened for the next 1d4 rounds of the area itself. Frightened creatures must take the dash action and move away from the haunted area by the safest route possible on each of their turns, unless there's nowhere else to move. After the haunt is activated, it won't activate again for 24 hours. So again, if you're frightened, a d4 rounds, you have to dash away. And I like this one a lot. This reminds me of, I don't know if it's how it's spelled out, because I can't remember from Curse of Strahd, but like you going to like Strahd's like maybe dining hall, or like you've seen this in movies, right? Where you go and like you're transported back and like it's like decrepit and old and spooky, and you walk into the room and then it's like it's all golden in its heyday, and you're watching these events play out, and then all of a sudden something tragic typically happens, and that usually shocks you back to reality. And that's pretty much what this Morbid Memory trap does, and it gives you sort of mechanics to do that and a bonus little frightened feature as well. So there you go, folks. Haunted Traps. I hope that this spawns, I'm sure it will if it hasn't already, DM's Guild products that will have more haunted traps for use in your D&D campaigns. I think these are really good. I like the mechanics of them manifesting, then you basically having a whole turn to figure out what you want to do. And then, so like, I don't know if you go into turn order, you know, you go into initiative and then deal with that. And then if nobody leaves by the start of their next turn, then it activates. I also worry that, again, as I discussed earlier, the issue of how you inform people that haunted traps are a thing and how they can respond to it. But also, I feel like this might be something that suffers from like a lack of mystique, because once I describe to you and you kind of understand the process that a haunted trap manifests, and then you basically have one round before the actual effects happen, that whole like, oh, back and forth, I don't know, what do we do? And then all of a sudden the DM says, and now this happens because the turn has passed. If you know and you're like, oh, trap's manifesting, it's a haunted trap, let's go do a thing right now before something happens, or get out of the room, or dispel magic, or channel divinity. Again, maybe I'm just overthinking it, maybe I'm thinking it too mechanically, but I don't know. Those are things that I see just from my perspective is, how do you inform the players that haunted traps are a thing and make them still interesting to them? And then once they've been used a bunch, does the novelty wear off? That like, oh, it's happening, we better figure out how we're going to stop it immediately within 6 seconds so that we don't have to deal with the effects of the trap. I guess the alternative is don't do all haunted traps, right? Throw in some haunted traps, and when your party thinks they're getting used to it, just throw in a standard like pit trap or like a boulder trap or spike wall, arrow slits. Something, because they're like, oh, maybe this hallway is trapped. Don't worry, guys. We've got 6 seconds to figure it out. And they're stuck with a bunch of poison arrows that shoot out of the wall. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on haunted traps in the comments down below. I really like these new mechanics. We talked about curses. I really, really like those. We talked about the fear and stress mechanics. I like those. And this whole new class of traps shows that there is a lot of creativity still happening over at Wizards of the Coast. This is something, traps, I feel like, are something that's kind of not, like, the best spelled out. You know, we had traps, and then I think they got revisited in Xanathar's guide, and now we're getting a whole new class of traps in these haunted traps, which is good. I like traps a lot, but, you know, they kind of get old after a while, and this breathes a whole new life, or unlife, into them. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Next time, we're going to dive into the next section, which is the survivor mechanics, which I absolutely love. It is an entire separate system, mechanics, and a way to play D&D that is non-typical. It's the closest thing you're going to get to trying to have like a true horror movie experience in D&D, as you are not playing your traditional character, you are playing a, basically, for lack of a better term, a commoner trying to survive some sort of spooky horror scenario, and if you happen to win, then you become a survivor. The only thing that I will say is a detriment to that before we talk about it in the next video is there's no adventure for survivors. There is the mechanics, and then there's the adventure in this book, but I would like official Wizards of the Coast survivor adventure so that we could see how the mechanics in the survivor system works with an adventure that they designed to use it. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.